There's a few people now online talking about limerence, what it is and how to deal with it. And of course, everyone has different opinions on what that means. But what I'm noticing is there are a few things that really clearly seem outside the boundaries of that. So there's one thing that I wanted to talk about today, and that is some people saying that limerence is a stage of a relationship. I completely disagree with that, and we'll talk about why. One thing to caveat here with is I'm not judging anyone particularly for categorizing limerence as anything because it hasn't been defined anyway. There is no clinical kind of definition in terms of like the DSM or something, the manuals that psychologists and counselors and the like use to diagnose conditions or experiences like this. Based on the work that established the term limerence, Dr. Dorothy Tanov's book, there are some things that are just not really part of it. And I think the consensus in the communities online would agree, at least in my experience of seeing clients, because I see clients about limerence. Yes, there are some things that are definitely not limerence, and a stage of relationship is definitely one of them. Anyway, caveats out the way. Why is limerence not a stage of a relationship? So it assumes two things. One is either limerence can transition into a relationship, which actually I don't think is impossible, but I do believe that you have to come out of limerence to meaningfully engage in an actual relationship with someone. So if you're limerent, really it's more the idea of them that you're obsessed with, not so much the person. You might think it's the person because that's what the limerent object or the mental object of this thing that you're obsessed with is based on, but it's not actually them. There are very different feelings associated with limerence than there is about infatuation or early stages of love or anything like that, romantic feelings in the general sense. Some of them being limerence is, your emotional state is very dependent on the approval of the limerent object, not so much about genuinely understanding them on a deep level or them understanding you. It's much more about approval, creating closeness, bringing yourselves together over some obstacles and that kind of thing. So it becomes much more about the battle than it is about being with a whole person and you being a whole person in that scenario. You're also reimagining scenarios of things that have happened. You're trying to instigate scenarios like bumping into them or designing in your head like ways that you're going to come in contact with them again. You're planning your conversations, basically trying to preempt everything that you're going to say to make yourself look a certain way, to seek their approval. And these are all, can they exist in the process of developing a genuine relationship? Sure, but not to the scale that they are with limerence, and not exactly in this combination to this degree. Also, as you enter into a genuine relationship with someone, the anxiety that generally happens in the early stages, which is completely normal, starts to subside because you develop a trust and a confidence in this person. Limerence really doesn't stop when it comes to the intensity of these feelings. So again, it's not about this transition into feeling more comfortable. It's only if I'm accepted in that moment or I get a positive signal from the limerent object, then I will feel good, and only then pretty much. And if I get a negative signal, then it is purely negative and I'm crushed. So it's not really an understanding more of what this person is like, because in a relationship you get to know someone more and you actually understand the intricacies of being with another person and your own flaws and how you're going to navigate those with this person. With limerence, there is not that direct psychological and emotional contact so much. That differs, but it definitely does not hit the level of having a relationship with someone. Now, is there a situation where you could enter a relationship after being limerent? I have seen that happen, but if you are limerent, I would really not rely on that as something that you want. Why do I say that? Well, I think a better priority is to get over the limerence, and then if there is the possibility of the relationship happening, try and open that as a new chapter. Because the thing is, if the only goal is for you to overcome limerence in order to enter a relationship, I'd argue you're not even addressing the limerence in the first place. Again, it's a rarity. I would say the vast majority of limerent people do not end up in a relationship with that person. So don't let this give you false hope that this might be a journey for you, because it could just feed the limerence to last longer. I'm just saying, technically, I think it could happen, but creating a definition of limerence where it's a stage of an early relationship, I think is completely wrong. I think it gives people false hope, and I think it could actually make the experience of limerence worse. So that's just my view. That's what I've seen. That's my experience of it. Now, the other element of this is I've seen some people say that limerence is something that two people can go through together whilst in a relationship. I think this is as far from limerence as you can get. I don't think this is possible at all, So I will flat out say that. And I think that is wrong. So the reason is, when you are limerent, there is no real accepting of each other. There is no actual contact with the person that means something. That doesn't mean that you don't actually see them or have a contact with them in your life. You do. But if you are in a relationship with them and you're both limerent, what does that mean? That means you're both desperately relying on each other's approval. You feel good or bad depending on that. How can that go two ways at once? I think it's very unlikely, if not impossible, that that would happen. And also, limerence kind of depends on the fact that there isn't a relationship. There's something to chase. There is an impossibility to the potential of being in a relationship with this person. How can you be defining this as a relationship whilst being limerent? It just doesn't make any sense to me, and I've never seen anything resemble that. I think it's worth dispelling these myths. I think we do have to be curious about limerence and open to the definitions to some degree. But when I see things that I think are actively going to make people worse, make them more confused, or keep them further away from understanding themselves and their experience, I do think it's worth calling out. Again, nothing against someone who's taken this view or come to that conclusion. I'm open to discussing it and understanding more if there's something there. But based on my experience, I think it's good to be clear on what is and isn't limerence, than having this open-mindedness create more confusion. Now, if you don't fall in the definition of limerence, don't let that make you feel more in despair, because the concepts of limerence or any psychological experience can help you, even if you don't clearly fall into that bucket, let's say, or that definition. So don't let it be an all or nothing thing. If concepts and techniques explored in limerence help you, then let them help you. If they're interesting, let them interest you. That's totally fine. But, having this definition of limerence as a stage of a relationship, I think it can be quite damaging to people. I wouldn't recommend it. So that's why I wanted to come up here and say that. So hopefully this has been useful. Let me know in the comments, and I hope to see you next time. Look after yourself.